not just the effects. You will never hear this or see this in a history book in any university. I ought to know because my own especially, you will never hear this. So it's a very important subject. It's probably the most dangerous subject that you could talk about. And if you have enough people listening in, then you're liable to meet with a happy accident. So the Federal Reserve, to cut it quite short, the Federal Reserve System is not federal. It has no reserve. It's not a system. It's a financial scheme that is superimposed on a real economy, and it is draining it to the gills. It has to be stopped.
Now
I'll just sit here and I'm saying any questions, I'll just sit here and take them now.
Now, Eric, what do you say to this? You just heard what Sydney said. We have been kowtowed now by these bankers, and there are very few of them, and get with it. What is the American populace and the Canadian populace doing to push their government officials to stop dealing with the private bankers, including the Bank of Canada? Now, I have a question. You sent a letter to Mayor Miller. He's the mayor of Toronto. And you told them a very good scheme now of how to deal with this huge so-called deficit that the city of Toronto is running into. And this is all because of infrastructure breaking down. And this is the problem. It's all about these private bankers. What happened with this letter, Sydney?
Well, I sent him the letter in 2004, and about a month later he sent me back a very nice letter saying he would pass it on to his treasurer. And my letter merely described the procedure, because you see, the Bank of Canada is totally different than the Fed. The Bank of Canada is owned by the people here. It's a publicly owned bank. But the people at the Bank of Canada are pretending it's not. So they're betraying and they're treasonable. So I wrote him and I said, this is the procedure whereby a city can go to the province can go to the federal government, and in turn they can hand down, they can present money to the city. And I sent him the papers, and he knows the charter of the Bank of Canada, so of course he had to write back and say, I'm going to hand this. He couldn't write back and say, you're wrong, because I wasn't. He said he would pass it on, but he didn't. So this year, things were so terrible in Toronto that they were going to levy 4 new taxes, and people were up in arms and took deputations to the council, and I went and I gave my deputation, and Mayor Miller was so embarrassed. He couldn't wait until I was finished, because I reminded him that I'd already told him what they could do, and he'd written me back and agreed that he would pass it on. I said, obviously you haven't passed it on, so just let me tell you one more time, which I did, and he could hardly wait for the end of my deputation and was quite cranky with me afterwards, when normally he's quite jolly and comes and puts his arm around me and blah, blah, blah. But this time he was very uncomfortable and did not want anyone to know that he had already written me back, and he realized what we could have done, and he didn't do it. So you have to ask yourself, what happened? Who whispered in his ear? Who told him to keep out of it and not do anything about this advice? So I don't know anything more, but I do know that now these taxes are coming up again for a vote, so there's going to be another big list of deputations, and I'll have to go on that again. So that's what happened here. But see, with the Fed, you don't even have, Americans don't even have the benefit of a charter, except in your, what is it, your Constitution. The Congress is supposed to issue money and determine the value of the money. So, but you can't go back to that, because your Congress is already known, and it's known here too. Your Congress is called occupied territory. So your Congress is not going to do anything. So all that, you would have to have a mass uprising. But in order to have that, you would have to get the information out there to the people as to how they are being ripped off, how their hard-earned money is going to other countries to make more war in the Middle East, and their sons are going over there to die, so that bankers and oil barons can live high off the hog, and that's it, basically. But Americans need to know that, and I think there's a lot of them on the net. A lot of them maybe already know. So am I right about some of that, Eric, or what?
Oh, yeah. What do you think about what the Federal Reserve is doing right now with the stock market? There's news today that they put in $38 billion, and they said they'll put in whatever they need. What do you think is going on right now?
Well, let me give you a little sample of what they do, and I think you'll know right away what they're up to. It's been going on for quite a while. Let me put it this way. The biggest corporations are the banks. To talk about corporate rule, you can't leave out the banks, because other corporations go to the banks for loans, because the banks are the most wealthy corporations on the globe. Now, when people talk about corporate this and corporate that, they usually don't even think that that includes the banks. And you have to make people aware of that. So when a corporation, I don't care how big it is, they go to the Fed, and they go there for a loan, and the Fed decides they're not going to give them a loan, and right away, as soon as the rumors, because that's nothing but the big casino, the stock market, I just call it the big casino. So the rumor gets around, this corporation, they didn't get their loan. Right away, the stocks start going down. When they go down, the Fed's agents buy those stocks. Now, a few months down the road, the Fed says to the same corporation, you know what? We think we're going to give you that loan. And right away, the stocks go up again. And who makes the killing by selling them then? The Fed. The Fed has complete control over the stock market. Any little guy who thinks he's going to become a millionaire on the stock market, forget it. He has to be an insider, or he has to be part of the Fed. I mean, the put options in 9/11, the SEC promised, I heard them, they promised that we would get that list of those people who knew it was going to happen and made billions on it. We have not got this list to this day, and I'll tell you why we haven't got it. Their excuse, after several months of people pressing them, their excuse was this. But, now this is really pinching it. They said, but having foreknowledge of an event is not insider trading. This is what their excuse was for not giving out that list.
Well, yeah.
There was one guy who didn't show up, who didn't get his money. He was a bit too late, $2.5 million or something. But of the group of them, billions were made on the deaths of about 3,000 Americans. Billions. Because they all knew. The people who made the money on the put options, so that was involved with the Federal Reserve.
What about that naked short selling issue that some people say is another big scam? Are they involved, or is that just a different group of people, just independently?
No, the Fed would always have to be involved in anything like that. You would have to have somebody on the inside involved with that. Because I can tell you now, if the Fed didn't want it to happen, it wouldn't happen.
Oh, so
that's how involved. No, they create the money supply. They are the total insiders. They are a private corporation. You can't find the Fed in any government listings in the phone book.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve is next to the Federal Donut Shop. It's next to the Federal Laundry. The name was put in there to make people think. And that's blatant. I mean, it's not even misleading. That's just an out-and-out lie. And I can quote you here. If you want to know what they said about this, listen. This is a letter from the Treasury to this same United States Senator. Here's the last paragraph of that letter. There is no need for the U.S. government to own, and they've got that in quotes, the Federal Reserve banks, since they act as agents of the U.S. Treasury. Here, he finishes by saying this: profits above a certain amount, we don't know what, are returned to the Treasury pursuant to law. Now, who made the law?